All right, welcome to another installment of the Fragments of Silicon reviews. Three reviews, one impressions up this week. First of which is Toki Tori 2 Plus. Right, so guess a bit of behind the scenes before I go on here. That is, sometimes we get games that don't work. For one reason or another, especially on the PC side of things. Especially with my system, having a laptop means many more things can go wrong, either because of system requirements or integrated circuits. Like, point is, this week was one of those times where a game didn't work and it had to be reassigned to one of my colleagues here, to be reviewed later on down the line. This has happened quite a few times. I couldn't say we've ever counted, but it's just a hazard of the job. Console. It's happened with console games, much less so, but it still happens. Anyway, the point of order is that is why Toki Tori 2 Plus here is being featured, because it is an old game. It's not being reviewed because the code was found or given or whatever. It's just filling a gap. So, with that in mind, Toki Tori 2 Plus, where to start with this one? I suppose the first thing to mention is the Toki Tori series in general. Basically, the flagship property of quasi-defunct developer Two Tribes. See, the thing is, I don't know how to quantify them because now, in terms of making new games, they've long since retired. Right. Like, in fact, I remember we reviewed Rive way back in the day when that first came out, and we even gave them a proper send-off. The thing is, they still ended up making ports of their games to the Nintendo Switch. Now, it's been a while since the last one of those appeared, but that's kind of because they ran out of games. Not entirely, but, there wasn't any more property to bring, and who knows if they're going to do the whole cycle again for, say, the Nintendo Switch 2. I suppose that depends on, like, cross-compatibility and such things, but a point is, Two Tribes no longer makes new games, and it's worth mentioning that Toki Tori 2 here, or Toki Tori 2 Plus, is the game that broke Two Tribes. Because the first Toki Tori game was initially a Game Boy Color release. One of the last Game Boy Color releases. Released right alongside Shantae, to give you an idea how late this thing appeared. And Toki Tori was a pretty simple puzzle platformer, in the sense that it's got, the side view and such, but it was definitely more of a puzzle game than a platforming game. Very single screen, very, I don't want to say simple, but very concise. I think that's a good word for it. As you'd kind of expect to, work on the Game Boy Color. And I forget if they mentioned how successful that was, but they ended up revisiting the Toki Tori concept in 2008, 2009 for WiiWare, in doing a full-blown remake of the game in a modern style of graphics. Who knows if that thing came out, like 10 years later, they would have done it like the Game Boy Color, to, expand to widescreen and do other quality of life improvements. Anyway, that Toki Tori was a success, and it ended up on a slew of platforms. And Two Tribes saw success with other games, such as the recently reviewed Rush, the console version of Sword and Soldiers and Edge, and so on and so forth, till we got to Toki Tori 2 here. So Toki Tori 2, or Toki Tori 2 Plus, the plus comes from they made a pretty major expansion to the game some months after it initially got released, with new puzzles, I want to say new areas. I forget the entire grand list, but it doesn't really matter today because you can't really get Toki Tori 2 vanilla anymore. One has to wonder if it got saved anywhere, because that could be legitimately lost media otherwise. Anyway, so Toki Tori 2 Plus took a very much different track than the original game. Instead of being a single screen, very tight puzzle game, we have here what they like to describe as a puzzle adventure game with Metroidvania trappings. Which I suppose is a good enough way to describe it, but maybe kind of undersells certain aspects and oversells others. Calling it a Metroidvania may place some unwarranted expectations on it, because one of the key aspects of a Metroidvania, as we know it today, is upgrades. And you don't get upgrades in this game. When you start, you have two abilities. You have the whistle and the stomp, and that's all you'll ever have in this game. So that's a pretty big core principle to not have. So as compensation, they've done a few things, like what Petty's displaying here. It's the environments. You've got to use the stomp and the whistle to manipulate the environments to get places, get collectibles, and the game teaches you as you go along. But the thing is, these are things that are taught. They're not things that you have to unlock. So if you know, like how to do, say, the grass growing trick, you can, quote unquote, sequence break much earlier than intended. And for reference sake, the grass growing trick is if you get dunked in a body of water, you drip out water droplets that allows grass to grow, and that covers you. It protects you from very grabby birds. And yeah, the bubble lizards, they're a very common puzzle in Toki Tori 2. A lot of this game is figuring out how to manipulate those, and the crabs here. And you also get there are also hidden songs that you will learn over the course of the game, or you can look them up online. Because once again, these things this is stuff that is taught, not unlocked. So if you know the notes, you can use the tunes right out the gate. Now the most of the tunes are pretty useless. Doing things like showing you where you are on the map. I'll be honest, I never found a terribly great use for knowing where I was. Really, the most useful overall song was the fast travel system. The thing is, you have to unlock the fast travel system by
touching the crystals, and they'll open, they'll shine up, and that's a new fast travel location. And there's also a photo melody, which allows you to do the equivalent of the unlockables. It's like you can take pictures of various objects and creatures, and if you collect them all, you get some sort of reward. I never got to that point. Anyway, so I suppose that's a good overview. Also, the game goes for a very naturalistic vibe, surprisingly enough. Like, you wouldn't think of it given the very cartoony graphics, but there's not really any music, just ambient noise, which is another difference from the first game, which had a pretty memorable tune, all things considered. I'll be honest. I don't think the ambient sound decision really worked here. If only because everything's a bit too Saturday morning to get that across. But your mileage may vary there. Anyways, so this game was highly praised back when it came out by those who reviewed it. It's just not all that many people reviewed it because the system of choice that was attached to this game was the Wii U.
Notable, popular, and well-accepted video game console that definitely had an audience, the Wii U.
Yeah, and like I said, this was a massively ambitious game. Like, honestly, probably their most ambitious overall, even over Rive.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is a very big game. And they touted that, it's an open world side view puzzler or something like that. I'll be honest, I like this game, but up to a point. That is, I always felt that this game, like back in the day and even today, was a bit too aimless for its own good. I think your overall goal, I'm trying to remember what the overall goal is here. Because it says on the Steam page that it's, I want to destroy the central crystal, or to maybe get five fishes. Like I said, I'm still not sure, or maybe to destroy the black goo that arises. Like I said, I've gotten a significant portion through the game, and I'm still kind of scratching my head at what I'm supposed to do. That's not good. And, this goes for the pantomime conveyance, a lot of actions, because there's no speech here, because why would there be? We're dealing with chickens and such. There's a bit of text with, the psychic fish. Oh, sorry, it's frogs. But outside of that, you can go places, you can do things, you can get the collectibles, some of which are locked away behind puzzles. There's one golden wing, I think they call it, that was hidden behind a portal puzzle that I didn't quite figure out. But if something's vexing you, you can go and do something else. Yeah. Also worth noting, Toki Tori here doesn't really have any offensive moves. Like, there are a few ways to destroy monsters, but once again, those are environmental. And yeah, I found this to be a good game, but I don't think it's up there with, say, Guacamelee or Axiom Verge, any of the really top shelf Metroidvania titles. Honestly, I think it's a bit weak as a Metroidvania title. As a puzzle game, it's aces. Like, it's a really good puzzle game, and you should really breach that angle should you choose to buy this. And along those lines, so Toki Tori 2 Plus here goes for regular price $14.99. I'll tell you right now, don't bother. If only because, the game is verging on like a decade old now, and it goes on sale fairly regularly, and you can pick it up for like pennies. Like, if not less than $1, then like a dollar, maybe $2. Like, it's when it goes on sale, it goes into the cup of coffee zone, and like it or not, that's when you should really pick it up. Especially since, as far as supporting the devs, well, it's like the time is kind of past for that. The time for Toki Tori 2 to sustain the dev has long since come and gone. So if that's something that weighs on your mind, don't. Anyway, Galax, you've been... Sorry. Galax, have you ever played Toki Tori 2?
No, but I think I played the one.
Wouldn't be surprising. Like I said, Toki Tori ended up on a whole host of platforms. Toki Tori 2 Plus, if I'm remembering correctly, is fairly well available on modern platforms. Like, I don't think it ever got a PlayStation 5 release, but it got a PlayStation 4 release.
So it means it works on PlayStation 5.
Yes. Really, like, looking up the systems that got released, really the only blind spot is the Xbox ecosystem. For whatever reason. I could probably guess, and that's because too small an ecosystem for the resources involved. Microsoft wasn't really interested. Maybe a minimum order was required to get on the store. There are all sorts of quirks with Microsoft. Anyway. But yeah, I think this is a good game that, has unfortunately been kind of forgotten in terms of great indie titles, and it really doesn't have the excuse of being buried under the Steam avalanche, since it came out when games on Steam were much less. But also, it was a showcase title on the Wii U eShop, and it still couldn't make enough sales. It is on the Nintendo Switch as well. That concerns you. And yeah, Teddy, anything you want to add to the conversation here?
Not really. The game's all right.
I'm sure that there are people who would disagree with me vehemently, because they are just in love with the game, like Game Maker's Toolkit. But yeah, It's like, give me something a bit more traditional in terms of a Metroidvania.
Mhm. Yeah, there's no real Metroidvania here.
Yeah.
It's more of an action puzzle at worst or best,
Yeah,
whatever you want to frame it.
yeah, I think that's really where my problem comes from here. It's not a Metroidvania, and it's trying to pass itself off as a Metroidvania. Or, like, I can't even say search action because it's not an action game.
Yeah. Or I guess maybe
Like,
adventure puzzle.
yeah, like something like that. Um, like, it's a good game in its genre, but it's trying to pretend it's in a genre that it's not. And I find that I guess I've always found that to be a bit disingenuous. Like, this is no Ori and the Blind Forest.
Right.
You know, like I said, I could name probably 100 Metroidvanias that are actually Metroidvanias.
Several which that we have reviewed on this show.
Mm-hmm. Before I get to this as a Metroidvania. As a puzzle game, yes. And I think that is very important because, this is a puzzle game. I cannot emphasize that enough. So with that in mind, I think that'll about do it for Toki Tori 2 Plus here. So be sure to tune in after the break as Petty Fan will be reviewing Liminal Core.